Oh, it's big, it's plump, and it's got a carbon plate. This is the Bondi X, a new experiment from HOKA that blends two of their standout technologies into one large inflated package, combining their thick EVA cushioning and breakout X carbon plate. This shoe is designed for those athletes who preferred HOKA's max stack and felt alienated by the Carbon X. So starting with a soft mesh upper and comfortable gusseted tongue, the Bondi X is impossible not to notice courtesy of that quintessential max midsole and new HOKA elf-like heel. Those familiar with the standard Bondi will feel right at home in the shape and feel of the new Bondi X, but the more responsive ride may be more than they bargained for. This is surely an interesting road kick and experiment from HOKA that I'm sure will have many runners divided. Can one of the brand's most popular cushioned shoes blend with its racing counterparts? Does the addition of the carbon plate do the Bondi any good? Or is it just too much? Hopefully we'll find out in today's review. Let's dive in.
Ginger Runner.
What is up, everybody? Ethan Newberry, the Ginger Runner, here for another Ginger Runner review. It's marathon season. I hope you are enjoying the coverage of all the big marathons that are coming up. It's an exciting time for runners across the world, and today we're going to be talking about a road shoe. From HOKA, we're going to talk about the Bondi X, their new max cushioned carbon-plated racer recovery shoe. We'll figure it out. Now, before we dive into the review of the Bondi X, I have to point out that this shoe was provided for review by HOKA. I'm under no obligation to say anything positive or negative about the shoe. I'm not financially compensated in any way for the review of this shoe, and all opinions are my own. You are the first to see them. No one has to approve them. With that said, let's dive in. Talking about always the things I like and dislike, starting with the things that I like. The carbon plate. Let's just be honest. I like what HOKA's been doing with their carbon plates. I've run on a number of their carbon-plated shoes, and I think they're really fun and really dynamic. So if you are used to the Bondi experience, very cushioned, a lot, real high stack height, adding the carbon plate to the shoe certainly changes those dynamics. One thing I really like is just the follow-through in your step. It does want to propel you forward, which is sort of the intention of the carbon plate. So overall, I think the addition of the plate contributes to a more dynamic feel underfoot, a very responsive ride if that is something that you're going for. So it will make many of you happy if that is what you enjoy. Fit. So despite the shoe size, it's massive. The fit through the midfoot and the upper is really nice. I think these mesh upper materials, the gusseted tongue, the lacing system, and the overall ankle lock just makes this shoe fit on your foot really, really well. And for a shoe that sits you higher off the ground and you don't get a lot of ground feel and stuff like that, having that trust in the shoe being and feeling attached to your foot is highly important. And I think the fit through this is better than I anticipated and better than other Bondis I've experienced in the past. Weight. So in my size 11, this shoe weighs 346 grams or 12.2 ounces, which for its size and girth is exciting. I can't believe that they managed to get so much shoe in such a light package. I don't want to say 12.2 ounces is light or featherweight, but for something this big and massive, it's a surprise and a welcome one. So overall, weight being as low as it is for something of this size, that is a perk. It is a plus. I like it. That being said, it's not all gingerbread crisps and eggnog with brandy. There are a couple of things that I dislike about the Bondi X. Let's get to those now. Stiff. Yes, I talked about how I liked the carbon plate. I like what HOKA's doing with carbon plates. However, I have to point out that this shoe is extremely stiff. It is extremely responsive, almost to a detriment. The Bondi in recent versions, in my opinion, has sort of suffered from that midsole becoming more and more responsive, less really soft and cloud and pillowy. What we get is that more responsive EVA mixed with the carbon plate, and it makes for an extremely stiff ride that just separates you from the ground. So it doesn't give you quite that snappy feel that you would hope out of a carbon plated shoe or a race ready shoe. It just gets you a really stiff package. I wish I could just delete that. If you were a fan of the Bondi, if you were a fan of responsive shoes, this may be something you'd like. However, for me, I always kind of lean into the Bondi as a recovery day shoe or a really long effort shoe where you're not planning on going really fast. So when you start to add that real stiff factor underfoot, it makes it less appealing. It's not close to the Carbon X or other carbon-plated shoes from other manufacturers that I really enjoy that do feature cushioning. It is just kind of in its own realm of stiffness. How many times can the ginger say stiff? Price. At $200, it is certainly on the more expensive end of things. However, comparing it to other carbon-plated shoes, that price point isn't completely outrageous or out of the question. It is a question, though, of whether that $200 is worth it for the experience that you get underfoot. I will say that for $50 less, if you are into a max cushion shoe and you really like something like the Bondi, that might be the shoe that you just want to stick with, because those shoes are leaning more responsive these days, and almost to the point where they feel better underfoot than adding a carbon plate and that max cushioning Bondi X style here. So 200 bucks. I think it's a pretty high price point to pay for something quite like this. Size, yes, it is lightweight. However, it is enormous. It is not quite as large as the HOKA's 10.9 experiment, but I will say the extra length, the extra width in the shoe, when looking down, it feels like you're just wearing giant marshmallows on your feet, and it is a bit off-putting for me. The overall size of the shoe is big. I'm sure you can clearly see just how big it is. It's not quite as big as my head, but it is quite large. And my final dislike is more of a question. Who is the Bondi X for? So that's sort of ultimately what I kept asking myself when I was running in the shoe. It is extremely responsive and stiff, so those who like that max cushion Bondi experience, they're not really getting that same experience. And those who like the snappiness of a carbon plated shoe aren't really getting that either, because there's so much more going along with this shoe. So it really kind of comes down to a question of who is it for? It doesn't feel like a fast shoe. It doesn't give you that excitement underfoot. So it really just leaves me scratching my head. It does a lot. It just doesn't do a lot of what HOKA's known for really well. So it's kind of a surprise. Kind of came out of left field. I was excited by it, but now I'm just sort of left scratching my head. That is it for dislikes. So let's get to the breakdown, where we break down 5 different categories of the shoe: build, quality, comfort, fit, price, and look. Starting with build quality, I do think the materials they're using are highly durable. You've got plenty of miles out of the shoe. I have well over 100 miles in the Bondi X at this point, and it's still holding up really well. There's some upper snags and stuff, but nothing, no blowouts, no real issues going on with build quality. It's just sort of, again, the combination of the ingredients that has me questioning, like, what is this? Who is it for? Comfort, I would say that that's probably the weakest point of the shoe. I don't think it's a super comfortable shoe. Those who do prefer a more responsive ride, that is where this shoe is certainly catered towards. But it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't provide me with that comfort underfoot. I feel like I'm fighting the shoe quite often, and longer runs, 10 plus miles in the shoe, is really fatiguing. I'm just surprised at the lack of comfort in it, especially in the Bondi line, which is notorious for being comfortable for those long, slower efforts, especially recover days and stuff like that. Fit, this is the shoe's strongest aspect. I do think that the upper and the materials that they're using here provide a pretty good lockdown across the midfoot and throughout the foot. I never really ran into any hot spots or issues whatsoever. I think this is where this shoe really does do a great job. Price at $200, it's at that steeper end. I think there are other shoes in that price range. You know, I'm talking about the RC Elite that are carbon plated cushion shoe that provide you with a different experience overall and are probably gonna be worth your money. However, if you are a Bondi fan and you do like those previous versions of the shoe, just stick with the Bondi. 150 bucks, $50 savings compared to this shoe, and it still gives you that responsive yet cushioned ride that you might be seeking. And if you do want a carbon plate, if you're just desperate for a carbon plated shoe, HOKA has other ones that do really well, like the Carbon X2, stuff like that. And finally, looks. I will say that the Bondi X is probably my favorite looking Bondi. It is big. And this little flared heel and stuff like that add to that bigness on your foot. But I do think just the design of it is one of the better looking Bondis in the line. The regular Bondis, the traditional Bondis, tend not to be really aesthetically pleasing to me. But this sort of does a better job of that. And I'm excited to see that HOKA just continues to kind of redesign their shoes and make them more appealing from a wide perspective. Bringing us to our conclusion. So the Bondi X, to me, is kind of a tough sell, just because I don't necessarily know who exactly it's designed for. I do really like the Bondi. I think it's a great recovery shoe, long distance shoe, as I've mentioned in this review. And having a carbon plated version of that sort of defeats the purpose of the cushioning, but also doesn't give you the carbon experience that you get from other HOKA shoes. So while I do really like that HOKA is experimenting and trying new things, trying to innovate, I'm wondering if they're pulling data from this shoe and sort of seeing trends and things that people like for perhaps future versions of different shoes. I do appreciate it when a brand takes a chance. I think this is clearly taking a chance. I just don't think it does anything particularly well. They have other shoes in their line that do those things well. So while the Bondi X certainly pushes the boundaries, I think the experiment falls flat, or in this case, too stiff. Bringing us to our final criteria. Is the Bondi X a buy, try, or a why? I will say it's a bit of a why, just because, again, I don't necessarily know who this is for. For those runners who are running in the Bondi, who might be questioning, like, am I good enough to run in a Carbon X? Yes, everyone is. I hate the idea that brands market shoes just for fast or elite people. I think all shoes can work for all people in different ways. So if you feel alienated from carbon-plated shoes because you're just used to more traditional cushioned style shoes, don't worry about it. Experiment, try them out, because I guarantee you there will be something for everybody. Here in this shoe, it is just a bit of a challenge to find who is it for. However, I love being corrected. So that wraps up today's review. If you have tried the Bondi X, in the comments of this video, please let me know what you think. I'm curious if anyone out there is like, man, this shoe is awesome. This is what I want to run in. This is what I love. It's marathon season, and this is what I'm training and racing in. Use the comments below in this video. Let me know what you're thinking of this shoe. If you want any more information or you want to get a pair for yourself, of course, we have affiliate links in the description. You can use them to get this pair of shoes, or you can use them to buy any running gear whatsoever. They cost you nothing, but they do help the channel out, and we really appreciate it. So consider using those if you haven't in the past. Social media links, and of course, patreon.com/thegingerrunner is how you can also contribute and support this channel. I do have to say that joining Patreon is not just, hey, I'm gonna support Ginger Runner. You actually get to join a really cool community. We have runners from around the world participating in our daily live streams and our ongoing events, including the upcoming Gingermas and stuff like that. So please consider joining the crew if you have not already. Again, amazing community, amazing people. We're so, so lucky to have such a wonderful viewing audience. So consider joining if you haven't already. That, again, is gonna wrap this up. Like, favorite, subscribe, do all that good stuff that YouTubers tell you to do. Click the notification bell. We got lots of videos and reviews popping up here before the end of the year. I hope you're getting out there training hard, racing harder, and partying the hardest. I know I am. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.